I introduce the next speaker. He's an award-winning filmmaker, and he brings a sense of storytelling to all his work. And he's a principal and founder of Potion, which create interactives outside of the screen. Please welcome Phillip Tiongson.
Hello. Are we on? Good, great. So, hi, thanks for having me. It's exciting. When we were thinking about design beyond design, I think as designers we're often asked to make spectacle. We are asked to think about, design something with a wow factor. And I started to think about, well, where can we go beyond spectacle? So I think at Potion, we think about how do we use architectural, social, and narrative components to really bring experiences beyond just the wow. I'm the principal, and my background is in software and filmmaking and storytelling. And I think that, this is me with my dad. I was always really interested in machines, and this is actually the story of my family. So I always had this little bit of facility with mechanics, and I had a little control. I always like to control the machine. And I'm actually controlling, I have the little wired remote control for the camera, which my dad is trying to take away from me. I always had that. And I think what was interesting is I was at the Media Lab, my mentor, John Midas, said, what you need is not the machine, is the story. So he really encouraged me to go outside and go to film school and think about that. So this is our shop on Canal Street. And we have this great interdisciplinary place where we bring together a lot of different storytellers, designers, technologists. And I think that that's important to make the kinds of things that we make. I'll just show a little bit of this. I think, well, that's spectacle. What we try to do is we make things that are visually striking, performance or display. I mean, we're often asked to make that. But spectacle has this weird double meaning where it also can be an object of curiosity or contempt. You see a train wreck, or you see something like, Vegas, where, technology is splayed everywhere, and it's so overpowering and wants to take over. I think spectacle in this context really creates a very specific expectation of interaction, which is you become spectators, you become watchers. And what we really try to do is to think about, well, if you're not watching, what else can we be doing? How can we engage people to get beyond watching? And is there a life after wow? So. with beyond spectacle, I mean, I think what we're trying to do is use these tools to engage a wider range of human experience. So the first part, the first aspect we think about is architectural. Human beings expect a lot from their spaces, even their virtual ones. I think when you look at this space, for instance, this is a ATM lobby, you immediately get a sense of, I'm going to wait a long time. I'm being treated like everybody else. You have immediate expectations from walking into this space. And the same thing when you sit down at your own desk. This is my partner, Jared, who's my co-founder. Your desk is yours. Everything's oriented to you. You have complete control over that environment. And yet it's the same technology as the ATM lobby. It's a computer, it's a screen. So how do we use those screens, in the environment when we go into spaces? And I'm going to show up. This is from the National Design Awards a couple years ago. I just thought it was interesting that technology is usually just sort of added on into the space. It's just it's just part of, like, this room is an amazing room, and then we have like these two little screens which help. I mean, they're there, but they're not really integrated into the space. So what we are looking at, and what we get the opportunity to do, is to create spaces where technology, this was for the Green Community exhibit in DC, where we could take projection and make it part of the space. Take technology where this was actually the introduction. So as you were walking to the exhibition, you would encounter this interactive projection. And it would begin to give you the messages that would take you into the space. So it slowed you down. It made you start thinking about, how did I even get here to this exhibition, to think about the strategies that you use to be in a green community. So I think that, and you get to see it move a little bit. That's in a museum context where you sort of get to create a space. I also wanted to show how it has to work in many different contexts. So we've also worked with Rockwell at a door, so this is on Fifth Avenue. And when you look at this bar, the last thing you think of is technology. You think of elegance, you think of, the door and St. Regis is about service. Right? It's about personal service. They're not trying to replace people. They want people to be at the center. And yet, when you encounter this bar, we have put information into the bar. And not as a replacement of the sommelier, but as another service that they provide to engage a larger audience. And we'll see it work a little bit. And this is David Rockwell's work, so can't take credit for that. But I wanted to show how the environment, the architecture sets up expectations. You know, you expect to be served here, and yet we can take technology and allow people to have access to it. And this was before the iPad had made all of this even more personal. But this was one way that we could do this. And so this rosette became a way to engage with the wine. And I think they liked it so much, and I believe there's actually, I talked to someone who worked at this restaurant. We designed a private dining room around the same concept. So there's an entire table now where it the information becomes part of the ritual of serving. So as they bring the food out, there's a food course, and then they take the food away, they replace it with a wine course, and then the sommelier talks about the wine. He then can send those rosettes to every place setting. You can have a conversation, you can drink, and then the technology goes away, and then you have a great meal. This is my team, actually. We were one of the prototyping guests that got to try it out, and we were very happy, not only with the technology, but with the meal. But once you move into architectural spaces, I think this picture is a nice segue into my next piece, which is, you don't go to these spaces by yourself. When you engage with technology in social spaces, it's not alone. And social has been sort of, I want to say, acquired by social networking. Like, people say, oh, you just add social networking to it, that'll make it social. But social networking is not socializing. I went to my Facebook, this was a little while ago, went to my Facebook page, and I had to scroll down all the way to here to see my wife's, who I see every day, post about my daughter. And I don't even know who this Jason Salentis is. I don't know how he got on my feed. But it's a very different connection to socializing. And oftentimes when you encounter Facebook in a social situation, you see this. You know, and this is me getting caught like checking my feed. And it doesn't become part of the space that you're in. So what we've, again, striven to do is to make sure that when we do engage technology in these spaces, that we not only acknowledge, but encourage social interaction. So just to talk about a few more museums that we've worked on. This is the Museum of Jewish Heritage downtown. We worked with CNG Partners on this. Even though everyone has an individual iPod, and it's an audio experience, when you walk into a circle with another person, you actually join their conversation. So you're hearing the same thing that everyone else is hearing in each circle. And you can walk around non-linearly. You don't touch any buttons. You actually don't touch the iPods at all. And the idea, which works, is that this whole circle will begin to laugh. You know, this whole circle, they'll all hear something and look at each other. And they have a moment that's shared, even though they're all in headphones and they're all by themselves. They are also still connected. This is an interactive that we did for the Museum of Science and Industry. There's this sort of Easter egg where this is a blood vessel, but if you block the blood vessel, you can start a heart attack. You know, sirens go off, and it becomes an instant favorite. Like, kids then pile onto the thing, it starts going off. It's again, this social moment that this technology allows, because people understand to block it is actually sort of hard. You have to do it with several people. And this is the kind of interaction we like to have, is this, where you have the technology is enhancing a conversation. It's giving you something common to talk about. But I think museums might be an easy sell, right? It's a quiet environment, you have technology, you have a conversation. Can it really work in a truly social environment, a bar? Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, we did that too. So, this is a very different kind of social setting again. I get to show something new. So we had Clo, which was a wine bar at the time, Warner Center, but is now moving to Tribeca. But we also just opened or worked on a restaurant in Moscow called Novi. And these are not museum environments. This is basically a very busy social space. This place people can get 4 deep on a Thursday night. It can be sort of a crazy time. But what we do is we try to put information here so that people have access to it and it becomes part of the environment. This is sort of this crazy Japanese video about this. I found this on YouTube. And I love her reaction to this. So you would take, I like how also she knocks that back. But the surface is a browsing environment. And we worked with 2x4 on this project. So the way that the wines are arrayed in the bar actually reflect the datum of the wines around the space. And the space is a very social environment. It's very interactive. It's about finding something, going to the wall, coming back, and engaging with each other around a conversation. At Novi, they took that concept even one step further, where it's not just the bar anymore. It's actually every surface of every table and the walls. So the tables themselves provide a way to engage with each other, but also I think I'll show this one. This is a movie that they produced for us, or for themselves. So it's a little interesting. I like her. I've never seen her before. But here she can make a message in Russian and send it to any table in the restaurant, to any bar, any seat at the bar, and of course she would seal it with a kiss. But you can see how the surface of the bar actually ages over the course of the meal, so that the idea is that when you come in, the tabletop is actually a clean tabletop, but then as you have your meal, cracks form, and it sort of ages in front of you, and it provides an environment for having a conversation, for sending messages, to be in this very flirty environment. And it has a very high performance requirement, because it has to work with food, with water, with drinks, with a lot of loud people. And I think, and then each seat of the bar has this kind of interactivity. And just to go back to that floor, like the entranceway to the floor, this is a very different kind of interactive, even though it's similar to what we did at the museum. This is just more of an ambient expression of like welcome when you come in. So I think that what's interesting about the working in this social context is that we're really looking at how do we bring people together? How do we keep people engaged together? And ultimately what that leads us to is the story of this place. Like, they want to create the story of a fun, flirty environment where you have effect on everything in the bar. And that's where I think the last piece comes to, and it actually speaks very much to what Bill was talking about in the beginning, is the stories that you use to understand and that your clients or that our clients want to express about themselves. So stories and narrative have natural characters, plot lines, shape, and duration. And I think that when you hear a short story or you pick up a novel, you have expectations. And we saw Wikipedia earlier, actually. So the Encyclopedia Britannica, when you see that set of volumes on a shelf, you have this expectation that is it's a big thing, it's a long story. And yet, when you go to the website, that doesn't say the same thing. Like, it doesn't really, this is the Encyclopedia Britannica website, and yet, is it about golf? It's confusing, but it doesn't have the same shape as that story. So a lot of the work that we have to do is to understand the story and then to give shape back to that story. At RISD, working with John Maida, this was a community display where it's a very messy environment of creators. And so what we did was we created a digital repository for all of their work. It uses a content management system where people can submit, because even in this analog community, everyone takes digital photos, everyone is making presentations. They all have it digitally, and yet the only way for them to send it out was to poster, right? So what we created were a set of screens where they could simply submit under their real name an image, and it becomes sort of created, and I'll show you how it sort of comes together in a real-time way. So this bulletin board / calendar was sort of being generated on the fly every 30 minutes with the newest stuff that was coming into the space. And what's really interesting is that it follows the shape of the campus. So during the summer, you can submit a picture of your sculpture, and it might be up there for a few days because there's no one around during the summer. But then toward the end of the semester, when everyone is doing their crits, everyone is producing a lot, you'll send your stuff up, and it gets its moment in the sun, and then it comes down, and it's replaced by your classmate, and everyone's work is constantly going up. During elections, you see it's all political. It becomes a reflection of what's going on. While when we worked with Nike in Beijing, they really had, for us, just they want to talk about one word, is performance. You know, it's about how do we create an interactive that's really about a single concept. It's not even a sentence. It's about, you know, how do we make something about lightness. And so what we did was we created this idea that with 2x4 about jumping. So the idea, if you jump, you know, like someone will jump higher than you, always. And we worked with them to develop for this exhibition. You would step on this pad and you would see this like 12-foot figure sort of in this distance waiting for you. And then when you would make a move, he made a move in response. And so we can show you. So here the story is very simple. It's just literally, you jump, he'll jump higher. And he would do these sort of crazy acrobatic tricks, different kinds of amazing motions, but all in response to your own performance. The more you performed, the more he would perform. And then finally, I get to share a project that we just released. And you can download, actually, this is the first project that you can actually download yourself. It's for the New York Public Library. And it's called Biblion. And here the story was as much the story of the library in its first app as it is the story that they wanted to tell, which is the 1939-1940 World's Fair. The library is just an amazing institution, and they just celebrated the 100th anniversary of this building, and so for that building they wanted to release an archive that had never really gotten a lot of public exposure because it's a research collection. So this is the collection, this is the library. It's a bunch of archival boxes, but it has some of the most amazing treasures because it is basically 100,000 documents that archive the inception from the inception to the closing day of the 3940 World's Fair. It's this snapshot of not just the fair, but all the people who came to it, the time, and the aspirations. And yet, it's all locked away. And even though anyone here can go request one of those documents, you look in a PDF, you see, or you can go to the website, you can request a picture, you see something completely out of context. And so how does the shape of all of that stuff express itself in an iPad app and that has no shape? It's literally just a plane. How do we take the richness of walking through the stacks and sort of bring that into the space of the iPad? So we had some sketches of taking the content and how could we array it in this sort of 3D space? How could we take it and give it shape? And I think that this led us to really try to find a way to bring that content back into the iPad. Can I switch this over?
Yep. Number. Sure.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Oh. Let me go back. So this is the app. And so what we do is we construct the space out of the content itself. And by giving you this representation of the stacks, again, we are sort of in the stacks now, and we can move between them and look at this theme. So this is a collection of documents and images from that theme. And we can look at the story and get a peek into these, this collection of stories and images. We tried to give you a peek into, if you're interested in documents or if you're interested in video, how to find that. But what I wanted to show is really how certain stories are short, certain stories are long. You have stories that have lots of photos. You have essays that are mostly text. And the text actually is a rendering of that's the actual text from the piece. We also have the gallery view, but we also present a reading view also. But so that what we're trying to do is, again, on the left side is the same representation, the text and the image, to try to give you a sense of the shape of each of these pieces. So I think that for the library, trying to tell the story, and how do I switch back?
Number
1.
Number 2 it is.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So what we tried to do was to take that whole collection and then give it shape and give its shape back. So coming back to Beyond Spectacle, I think that what we've tried to do is show that by moving beyond spectacle, beyond just the wow moment, we're trying to engage a wider range of human experience. And that by doing that, by using the cues from architecture, using social cues, and really using narrative well, that it leads to engagement, investment, and ownership, and not just watching. And I think just as what's beyond spectacle and what happens in the future, I think one thing that we are worried about in a over-consumer culture is that technology is replacing people. And this is my daughter. And that will that really happen? And I think her relationship to this thing is going to be very interesting. But that the technology itself is not actually the important part. The technology is going to be always changing. It's the medium. It will be what isn't really important in the future. What's really important is the narrative. You will always have stories. You will always have the desire to be with other people, the social component, and the architecture is the spaces that we create for people to be together. So that's the kind of thing that we like to do. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm curious with the New York Public Library app, like who you see the audience and who's going to use it, how, why. I mean, it's very different from doing a Google search. You're looking for a particular person who displayed in that fair. Like what is this new form of entertainment, or is it research, or what is it that people are doing with it?
No, that's a great question. And how do people find it? I mean, I think that one thing that we were looking at is there are a lot of models for ebooks and for magazines and for content that is, I want to say, very packaged and has very analog heritages. You know, that magazines look like magazines because the advertisers want their ads to look the same. You know, that there's a one-to-one connection. This collection was unique because it didn't have a collection. The collection is a bunch of boxes in the library. It doesn't have a form that we had to mimic. And I think that what we wanted to do was really show, well, it doesn't have to be a magazine. It doesn't have to derive directly from an analog place. And be an example of what else or what other spaces you can create with that information. I don't think we know exactly who is going to need that, but I think that really everyone, it provides a new way of accessing that information, and it hopefully will show the direction that we can move in consuming that information, and that it's a collection of scholarly material, but it's presented in a way that really, we've had something like 90,000 downloads since we released it 2 weeks ago, and we were iPad of the week, so people are engaging with it clearly in a way that they could never engage with the physical collection, and so I think everyone's excited by that.